Naheed Nenshi officially announced his bid for the leadership of the Alberta NDP this afternoon. The former mayor of Calgary is looking to fill the shoes of outgoing leader Rachel Notley.
There is a choice, a better choice. Alberta's New Democrats are that alternative, a party based on values we all share, Alberta values.
There are already 5 candidates in the running: Edmonton NDP MLAs Jody Calahoo-Stonehouse, Sarah Hoffman, and Rocky Pancholi. Also, Calgary MLA Kathleen Ganley and longtime Labour leader Gil McGowan. The leadership vote is in June, just a few months away, but Naheed Nenshi joins me now. Naheed, it's good to have you back on the show. It's been a while since.
Hi, David.
It's good to see you.
Ever since the CBC decided not to go forward with my own show, Policy and Governance, I had to find something to do to get back into the conversation.
Okay, well, you're back in the conversation today in a big way, but I wonder, you have, since I've known you, you have prided yourself on being nonpartisan, and that all ended today. Because to lead a party, you got to join a party, you have to take a side. Why are you comfortable making this choice at this stage in your career and life?
It was a big jump and a big decision, and ultimately, I am an Albertan. I love this place. I love what we stand for and the potential of this place. But I realize that the current government that we've got, no surprise to folks who have seen me on this show, is taking us down the wrong path. I've said that they're not only incompetent, but they're immoral and they're dangerous. And I thought to myself, you know what, Naheed, you prided yourself on the purpleness, you prided yourself on bringing people together outside of a party structure. But if you want to make a difference for Alberta, you got to join a team. And the good news is that I found a team that, even maybe a surprise to me, was really aligned with my own values and what I believe in, strong public services, protecting the vulnerable, but also building the economy, making sure that we're building prosperity, that we're doing so in a way that is environmentally sustainable, that reacts properly to climate change, and that balances the budget. So ultimately, with all of those things in mind, I realized, you know what, I do have a home.
Right.
And I hope that more Albertans will find that this could be their home as well.
Well, until today, you've always described your political philosophy as purple, a blend of liberal red and conservative blue. There's no orange in that, but there's orange all around you right now. I mean,
yes.
How does the NDP align with that? Because most people would look at the New Democrats as more of a progressive socialist working class kind of party than that purple mix you've talked about.
Well, I've always also said that I don't really believe in the ideological spectrum of left and right. I believe in doing what's right for people. And, when I first jumped in with the purple, and you can see a little purple behind me there too, but when I first jumped in with the purple, I really did think it was a mix of red and blue. And yes, that does mean the center, what I call the muscular middle, but it also means not defining ourselves by our tribes, but defining ourselves by our common humanity. And in this case, the Alberta NDP is quite different than the federal NDP. And it is indeed a party that, prairie populism, if you like, the Roy Romano or the Gary Dewar NDP, is really about take care of the money, balance the budget, look after the most vulnerable. And in my mind, even though the color is orange, that is kind of a purple thing. And by the way, I just was reminded today that in the 80s and 90s, the Alberta NDP did in fact use purple as their color.
Okay, so you're convinced the NDP is the right home for you. How do you convince the NDP that you're the right leader for them? Because you're the last candidate into this race, unless someone else comes in, and the other candidates
only 4 days left.
Right, yeah, and you don't have a lot of time to sign people up, and you're just joining the party. So how do you overcome those deficits?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that I am not interested in taking over this party. The N in NDP should not stand for Naheed Nenshi. And I also am very cognizant of the fact that I wasn't there when there were 2 MLAs. I wasn't there when there was 4 MLAs. I didn't do the hard work of bringing this party into the formidable force that it's become. Rachel Notley and her team really did all of that work. They built this house, and those folks will always have a home in this house. But I also think that many people in the party understand that we also need to welcome others into our home. We need to help other Albertans realize that they also share NDP values. And that's going to be my challenge, not just over the next few weeks until the leadership, but also, if I'm lucky enough to be elected, over the next 3 years, to really be having those deep conversations with people about who we are and what we stand for. And I'm up for it. And I hope that the party is up for it too. I also want to say that this is a family affair. You mentioned those 5 other candidates, including 4 exceptionally capable, exceptionally brilliant women who are running for this leadership. I've spoken to all of them. They've all encouraged me to run, though they've all also said, hope you're okay coming in second. But I hope that we'll really be able to shine a light on this, have national interest in what's going on in Alberta, but more important, get Albertans fired up about a better possibility through this leadership race, and I'm really excited about that.
Well, how do you reach those Albertans that Rachel Notley couldn't reach? Because when I was out in Calgary and saw you there for the election, your party, your now party, did great in Edmonton, did pretty good in Calgary, but couldn't break far enough in the South Calgary and couldn't break out of those 2 major urban centres to stop Danielle Smith. And here you are, I would say, a urban progressive former mayor of Calgary. How do you reach rural Albertans?
That's a terrific question. And, if we're just being all power and politics about it and we just overlay the map of where I won 3 times over the map of where the NDP just didn't quite win those seats, the NDP would have a majority government. But it's not that simplistic. Mm-hmm. It's much more than that. And if I'm critical a little bit of the NDP since they took power in 2015 is I think they weren't as present in places like Red Deer and Medicine Hat and Grand Prairie and Fort McMurray as they could have been. And one of the things that I learned in all my time running as mayor is I was as present in Northeast Calgary, where I'm from, as in the Deep South, as in the more wealthy parts of the city, as in the more working class parts of the city. And my job really is going to be present, but also to help people in all of Alberta understand that this government we have right now is not the conservative government you're used to. This is not a government that Peter Lougheed or Ralph Klein would have been comfortable in. It's something else entirely. And when we think about what really needs to happen in small town and mid-sized cities in rural Alberta, well, look, they're closing the emergency rooms. The schools are not of the quality they need to be. There can't be guaranteed that there's going to be an apprenticeship or a college or a university spot for that kid graduating high school. They can't even pave the roads well. And so given that, I think that rural Albertans who share these values of trying to build a better community will be able to find a home in the NDP, but my job will be able to show them that that home is there.
I asked this question with respect because, and I hope you'll take it that way, I have seen a lot of household names in my years show up to run for the leadership of a party, and then if they don't win, they disappear when the next election comes. Are you in this just for the leadership? If you don't win it, will you run for the NDP in one of those Calgary seats where you did well in mayor in the next election should one of the other 5 come out on top?
You didn't need to preamble it. It's an important question. And, for better or for worse, people know my name, and hopefully that's an asset. And to answer your question, really, if I don't win, it depends on the leader. I take up I'm very self-aware, which surprises people sometimes. I take up a lot of oxygen. I'm a big guy. I'm a big guy physically. I fill a room and I stop my big clown feet all over the place. And if the new leader thinks that that is something that will be a benefit to her and she would like me to run, then absolutely it's something that I would look at doing with her. If she says, you know what, Naheed, maybe you're in a better off in a different role helping us take this government, that is a conversation I'm happy to have. Right now, I'm in this to win the leadership, but mostly I'm in this to help build a better Alberta in whatever way my small level of skills can do.
Okay, you gave us your argument against Danielle Smith. What's your prime argument in favor of Naheed Nenshi as next Premier of Alberta?
Alberta is one of the wealthiest jurisdictions in the world. We should be doing so much better. We shouldn't be reacting. We should be leading the world on sustainable energy development, on anti-poverty work, on mental health and addiction. We have been for so long a beacon of hope for people around the world. Now we have to live up to it. We need the world to look to us. And so you can see my slogan behind me, for Alberta, for all of us. And that is my promise to Albertans, that we might sometimes disagree, but you will always know that I have the best interest of Alberta in my heart, and I really want to build a better Alberta for all of us.
Well, Naheed Nenshi, it's good to speak with you again. Thanks for coming on the show today, and good luck in the race. Well, I'm sure we'll probably have you back.
Thanks so much, David.
That's Naheed Nenshi, former mayor of Calgary, former panelist on the show, now running to be leader of the NDP. Former Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi is running to lead Alberta's NDP, saying Premier Danielle Smith's government is dangerous for Albertans and needs to go.
Danielle Smith and her government are not only incompetent, they're immoral and they're dangerous. The only things they know how to do are pick fights and waste money.
Nenshi is joining a race that already has 5 candidates in the running, with a vote coming at the end of June. The Power Panel is back on that topic. Rob Russo, Vandana Cotter, Brad Levine, and Lisa Raitt. Okay, Brad, what do you make of this? Is this Nenshi mania? Because already we've seen his leadership rival, Kathleen Ganley, told Rick Bell is going to be on the show later. She wondered how someone who hasn't believed in being on a team can lead a team to victory. Does she have a point there?
Well, that's a point I think her and some of the other candidates are going to have to make to the membership, because, you know, to remind folks, this is a membership only gets to vote on the leader of the party. So she's going to have to make a compelling case there. There's I think there's somewhere between about 17,000 members roughly at this stage, at least the last kind of public statement. There could be more since the leadership race. You know, the key here, and the cutoff is April 22. So we've got about 6 weeks flat out. I'm sure Mr. Nenshi's already been, lining up the organizers. The key here is, delegates on the first ballot. It is a ranked ballot, which is important. So you got to be nice to your fellow competitors, because you want to be folks' second choice if your first choice drops off the ballot. So will be interesting to see how that tempers the debate there. But Nenshi's got name recognition, and that's good. I mean, he's on all the shows. He's getting tremendous earned media in the last handful of hours. That only matters, though, of course.
See what happens tomorrow.
When it comes to whether or not that's enough for people to be attracted to join the party. He's got to fight over those 15 to 20,000 people who are already there. So, but it's heating up. It's turning into a very interesting race.
Yeah, so Lisa, 15 to 20,000 members now, maybe as many as 20,001, because Nenshi had to join the party to be able to do this. He's a late convert to partisan politics, right? Because he has sort of prided, as a lot of municipal politicians are. Well, I think he's ideologically partisan, if that makes sense. Okay. He's more in alignment with an urban progressive-based party than a rural conservative-based party, I think it's fair to say. But that's the sort of skepticism that could greet him inside the Alberta NDP. I mean, how much of a challenge is that for a guy like him, do you think?
I think it is a big challenge. I would think about it from another aspect too. I mean, I would ask him very clearly, you understand that it's not just you running the show, that you're going to have MPPs, and that you're going to have people who want to be MPPs who are going to be a really important part of your team. And I would like to show to you what happened to other party leaders in the province of Alberta who didn't listen to their other MPs. And, the ground is littered with them, unfortunately. So the reality is that he's got an uphill battle. I'm definitely going to be watching it. I think it's going to be a fascinating race. And if it brings a little bit more, I would say, focus and attention to the Alberta NDP, it's probably good for the party in general. But I'd love to see what Jagmeet Singh has to say about it, Brad. You'll have to tell me what he says.
Yeah, well, you make an interesting point there. And Rob, I have to say, it's MLAs in Alberta, just like it's MHAs in Newfoundland. No, I know. It just, when people call it MHAs, MLAs, I hear it from home. So I just wanted to correct it for the fine people of Alberta. But what he talked about, Nenshi, when I spoke to him earlier, there is this distancing happening with the federal NDP. So while they try to do that as a party, how does he get them to embrace him as a new convert?
I thought he got off to a great start. He took it head on today. He said he understands why people might be resentful of him, and he gets it. He understands it, including his 4 rivals, which tells you something about his communications acumen. I found it, as Captain Renault would say in Casablanca, just an unbelievable coincidence that he was able to get everybody to hold back on what was clearly an announcement planned long in advance, because everybody seemed to have the scoop at the exact same minute. So that tells you he's not just an effective communicator, but an organized communicator. And if he's that organized, it's because he's got a pretty good team. So he's going to be formidable. He's not talking just about joining the NDP. He's talking about, in some ways, reinventing the NDP. He's talking about signing up a whole bunch of people who don't normally sign up for the NDP, and that, as you referred to them, a lot of urban dwellers. He's also talking about, selling memberships and expanding beyond the traditional NDP, not to supplant them, he's careful to say, but just to make it more accessible to a whole bunch of different people. So he's really talking about remaking the NDP, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes, particularly when your question about Jagmeet Singh. Not a lot of coordination often between New Democrats, even NDP premiers like Mr. Eby and Jagmeet Singh, who seem to be more closely aligned with Justin Trudeau, or have been in the last little while. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not he ignores them or courts them. I think he has to court them. But I think his goal is to expand the definition of what a New Democrat is in Alberta, and it'll be very, very interesting to see if he does a kind of Tony Blair, New Labour campaign.
Well, I mean, Vandana, he's got to expand the membership list of the NDP, and he's got about 30-something days to do it, I think, right? I think April 11th, I believe, is the shut-off for that. I mean, what's that? Sorry, Brad?
April 22.
April 22. Sorry, there you go. I'm getting fact-checked in real time. This is good. That's a challenge coming in late. I mean, look, he's got a lot of New Democrat stalwarts around him, so there's probably a lot of work done on this already. But like, what sort of headwinds does he face, if any?
I actually think what this reminds me of is, when we were on Justin Trudeau's leadership campaign, I just finished Bonnie Crombie's campaign. When people have their parties getting beaten a little bit, they're excited and they want to win. And someone with that type of caliber, people will look past, I find, some of the things that people have brought up, like, has he worked with the team before? Anyone who's worked with Nenshi, like I've worked with Nenshi, he is a pleasant person to work with and a reasonable person to work with. I think he'll have to convince it, but I think he'll do two things. He'll expand the party. I think there are people who may not have traditionally maybe went to the NDP, but will add their names on now, so we'll bring in new memberships. But also, at the end of the day, if the party membership, if they feel that this guy can help them win and beat Danielle Smith, I still think they'll get behind him.
Brad, how do you view that? Because I wonder, when you're so closely associated with a single piece of geography, in this case Calgary, a big, robust, diverse piece of geography, but he's the mayor of Calgary is how people know him. And does that play in Medicine Hat? Does that play in Fort Mac? I don't know. I mean, what sort of a challenge does he face there?
Well, for the members, they're going to see can his high profile from his time as mayor, can that draw new eyes to the party? That is, can he translate that knowledge that people have of him? There's no question. But listen, in Alberta, it's a two-party system. It's a relatively recent phenomenon, I would suggest, since the 2019 election campaign. When you have a two-party system, this is fundamentally different from a place like Ontario with three stable provincial parties, or the federal arena where you've got multiple parties. But in Western Canada, there are two parties, and when you get to the two-party system, both tents need, to varying degrees, the tents need to be a little bit bigger than in the multi-party. So the Alberta NDP needs to attract, in order to gain that 50% plus one threshold, more. So the debates are different in a province like British Columbia, predominantly two-party system. There's a little bit of Green in there, and now the Tories are coming on, but predominantly a two-party system. So the tents are bigger. So the NDP tent in Alberta is much, much bigger than, say, in a province like Ontario or at the federal level. So the real key is to go to those members and say, we want to win, we want to defeat Danielle Smith in the next election campaign. How do we do that? Well, you got to hold what you got, but you got to expand. The loss actually came in the southern part of Calgary. Mm-hmm. So Nenshi needs to make the case to, and others do too. Ganley is from, Catherine Ganley is from Calgary. They need to make the case that they can win those southern Calgary seats. That's the difference maker in the next election campaign. They're not going to win those rural, those conservative rural seats. Those are never going to be, just like the downtown Edmonton seats aren't up for the UCP. So the battleground in the last election and in the next one will be southern Calgary. Can Nenshi and Ganley and others make the case that they can win over those predominantly suburban middle-class voters in the southern part? Because that's where the election is decided in the province of Alberta.
It's a fascinating political dynamic, Lisa, in Alberta, right? With the government completely shut out of the capital city in terms of seats. And really the path to victory for the opposition, whoever wins this leadership race, is to just win the two big urban centers and have really nothing of consequence in rural areas. I know there's specks of it here and there in some of the more mid-sized urban rural centers in Alberta, but it really is a polarized map out there.
Yeah, and I'm listening attentively to how Brad puts it in perspective. I think that's really interesting. It makes me understand it a little bit more of what's going on. I do know the importance of having the three bases, Edmonton, Calgary, and then rural. And it makes sense that any new leader of the NDP is going to have to shore up in the areas where they have a chance to win but haven't been able to break through. Maybe Nenshi's the right person, maybe somebody else is. It's going to be a fascinating, I would say, next 6 weeks of getting from here until we actually see who's going to be the next leader. And then from there, let's see what ends up happening.
Rob, Nenshi on the show earlier said if you overlay where I won in Calgary, he conceded himself it's a bit simplistic, but he did make that point.
Yep.
But while he's also running for that and running for the leadership, there is this running away from the federal NDP that's happening in Alberta at an alarming rate, I think, for Jagmeet Singh and his federal cousins. When you look at, they got just over 10% in Durham, where like you've got auto workers and stuff in that area. There's some interesting times happening for his federal cousins.
Yes. And look, I was waiting for Vandana to say this. She's too modest to say this. Then she has done a bit of a dance with the Liberals over the last several years. She let me know.
Did he do the dance with them, or did they do the dance with him?
Well, they did the dance
they were
with
seeking
him.
the pioneers, as they used to
We
call
dance
them
with
in
each other.
Alberta.
That's
yeah,
right.
there you go.
But I think he's right. Rachel Notley succeeded in taking the NDP in Calgary from about 3 or 4 seats to about 14 seats in the last election.
Mm-hmm.
But Nenshi did draw progressives, urban and centrist voters in Calgary. And if Brad is right, and he's rarely wrong, only occasionally,
When he disagrees with
he's
you.
going to draw. He's going to draw centrist voters. He is, and he might not be your ideological brethren, but if he comes with the whiff of victory, I think that some people might hold their nose and vote for him because he can attract from the center.
Well, Vandana, if you go back and look at what happened in the last Alberta election, it was really the NDP promise of tax increases, right? That and it was fully costed in their platform, which they did as a defensive measure to prove they had nothing to hide. And Albertans said, "Oh no, that's not on." And I wonder where Nenshi fits into a political dynamic like that if he is a centrist, more on fiscal policy, as Rob suggests.
I think he'll be able to understand how Albertans are feeling and be able to go from that. And I think what he'll be able to do is go to his membership, speak to the people, connect with them well, and build a policy that works for them that may not be something they traditionally have seen from the NDP, which is what makes him exciting to a lot of people because he doesn't, to touch on Rob's point about not being ideologically, I think people are tired of that. They see how it's playing out federally, right? So I think people, if you don't fit a certain box, most Canadians don't fit a certain box. And I think that'll really resonate with a lot of Albertans overall.
So Brad, how does he fit more people into the NDP box, in this leadership race and potentially after that, should he win? Does he truly have, are there truly enough of those centrists to make the difference? The people who might have liked Rachel Notley's approach to things on social policy, but recoiled from the idea of tax policy. Because, people like to say Albertans are fiscally conservative. Really, it's more of an anti-tax political culture. Where does Nenshi fit into a dynamic like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that Nenshi's the timing of this leadership race is going to be in direct contradiction or in comparison to what Daniel Smith is doing. Things like cost of living, electricity prices are through the roof. The trans rights, that's where Nenshi kind of recently came out. We haven't seen much of the former Calgary mayor, but he gave a very moving speech at the rally, which is opposed to the initiatives of Daniel Smith on trans rights and children. So, I think that it's tapping into the issues, and you could hear him during your interview, kind of pushing aside the ideological left-right spectrum, which I agree, I don't think many folks subscribe to anymore. But it's the notion of is there policy alternatives to what's going on in my life today? Cost of living, healthcare, the wait times in Alberta hospitals are crazy. Auto insurance through the roof. Crazy stuff. So cost of living, if he can he doesn't have to be on the left-right spectrum, just an alternative to what Daniel Smith is saying, and then use his ability to get media coverage. Right. I know you've covered all the folks that put their hat in the ring, but this candidate is getting and probably will get more in the coming hours and days. Can you amplify that? Because a lot of the Democrats love it when you're a contender. And look for polls in the coming days from the pollsters who are going to be talking about, could Nenshi make a one-on-one debate with Smith? Could he put the NDP into contention, into true contention? And viability is a great motivator, particularly for Alberta Democrats, who I believe are stubbornly wanting to win the next election versus winning ideological points.
So Lisa, just as a quick final point, it's going to be tough to get more media attention than Daniel Smith. I think that's safe to say. But just one of the things Nenshi said was that he called Smith and her government immoral. So it sounds like throughout this leadership, he's going to go at her hard on a lot of these issues that Brad just outlined, trans and other policies there.
Yeah. It would appear. And what I find interesting is they have a personal relationship that goes back several years. They knew each other a very long time ago. And that always makes it, I think, for a little bit of an uncomfortable kind of campaign. Immoral is a strong word to use. And obviously, you can't leave that hanging out there and not continue to talk about exactly why you use that inflammatory language right out of the gate. So I expect we'll hear more and more about it.
Yeah, it's a core part of his launch message. There's no question about that. Gang, thanks so much. We're out of time. Lisa Raitt, Brad Levine, Vandana Cotter, and Rob Russo. Thanks, gang.
Thanks, David.